I've been noticing John Fetterman, who obviously had a stroke. I'm not like a diehard Fetterman guy. I think he's
I'm not
decent.
either.
I think he's decent enough. He's not exactly like capital P progressive, but he's certainly better.
He's better than Oz. He's better than Oz. I mean, especially as someone who has family in Pennsylvania, his flakiness on fracking is very concerning. And then I think he's kind of flaky on Medicare for all too. So yeah, he's not.
Yeah.
He's certainly no progressive savior. Is he better than Oz? Yeah, but
yeah, I would think he's also better than a lot of. I would think he's better than like the Pelosi wing, and he's not going to be hardcore where we want him on the top issues, but I think he would be better than a lot of the corporatists. With that said, I've noticed something. He just had his first interview with the national media since his stroke, and it was like wall to wall yesterday and today segments on Fetterman, and is he being fully transparent and replaying the clips, which clearly he is not fully cognitively there. He just had a major stroke, delays in words, slurring certain words, this and that. And they are very vigorously covering it. There's valid questions. I'm not saying don't ask him questions about his stroke or his prognosis. Voters might be interested. But to me, it's almost like there's an agenda. So let's play some of the clips. Colin, you put some stuff together.
I want to bring in CNN Chief Medical Correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta to discuss. Sanjay, it really was something to see that camera behind Fetterman where you could actually see the closed captioning that he was reading. What are the impressions that you're seeing from this?
I'd be pretty worried if I were the other side.
So
John's doing really well, and I think he's been very transparent about his health.
There will be a debate between these two men a little bit later on, and the voters of Pennsylvania are going to get another chance to see how they both do and whether they feel comfortable with Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman in the open seat for senator. But those that are in Pennsylvania that might still have questions about whether this means that he's fully capable of doing their job, I think it's fair for them to ask that. Why not release the full medical records just to be completely transparent, to quash any fears, if you say the doctors say you're going to be okay?
Well, Katie, I'd say a couple things. Number one is I don't give advice to other campaigns. I'll just observe what I've seen. Number one is I've talked to John on a regular basis for months now. I noticed the progress he's made.
If he were to serve in the Senate, say he never gets any better than he is right now, and he needs to use this closed captioning forever, maybe. Is there any reason for you to believe, as somebody who currently serves in that chamber, that would make it harder for him to do his job there, harder for him to serve the people of Pennsylvania and to function at the high level needed for the Senate?
No, I've been doing this job a long time.
Of people and having interviews and getting around all across Pennsylvania, that gives everybody and the voters decide, if they think that it's really the issue.
I mean, look, it raises a lot of questions. I think the risk is that it makes it seem like they're hiding something, right? That if something came out in these records, it would be a political problem, and therefore they would prefer that the public not see them. I mean, that is kind of the central challenge. And, this is, I think, where the way that he is conducting his campaign, is going to affect the outcome of the election.
Right. I think they're asking a lot of, they're basically asking Pennsylvania voters to trust us. Like, look at me on the campaign trail, trust the doctor's letter that we gave to you in June. And I think particularly in a very partisan environment, that's fine for many voters in Pennsylvania, definitely Democratic voters. But I still think obviously voters are owed full transparency. And I think when he does appear a little bit defensive about the lack of actual records being made public, I think that's a tough challenge for them.
Again, I'm not saying there should be no questions asked to Fetterman, but Jesus Christ, it seems to me I didn't see this kind of vilification. First of all, Donald Trump wouldn't release his taxes. They kind of just accepted that. They didn't grill Trump on his taxes. And when he just changed the topic, they moved on.
Well, and they did get the one thing where he was a Boy Scout that year, because it was wasn't it the year? It was the year that I think it was like, I don't know if it was his wife, but she was going to get like citizenship or something. So he gave like this tax return that was like very just generic, and Rachel Maddow was all like, "Yeah," and it was just nothing.
Right. Colin, let's play the Chris Matthews clip. Who I don't even know why he's invited back on MSNBC.
No.
Chris Matthews had something to say on John Fetterman.
Transparent.
And we're going to talk to Dasha Burns a little bit later in the show about that interview with John Fetterman. Chris Matthews, what's your read on the state of this race? Dr. Oz has been closing ground, and how much the stroke suffered by John Fetterman might play into a voter in that intimacy of the voting booth saying, well, maybe I don't love Dr. Oz, but I do have concerns maybe about Fetterman's health.
Well, you're saying it the right way, Willie, because there's no support for Dr. Oz. His numbers are in the low 30s. He's a weak candidate. He comes from New Jersey. The joke is he's crossing the Tacony-Palmyra Bridge like everybody else coming down the shore. It's called down the shore in Philadelphia. He's not great, but this thing about the Dasha, her interview was wonderful technique.
Yeah.
She was soft. She was reasonable, and she asked reasonable questions of a guy who cannot answer the question because he has to look at the monitor. This is a great question. I mean, if the Republicans are smart, they'll say, how's this guy going to debate for Pennsylvania on the Senate floor? Is he going to bring a monitor on with him? I mean, they can be really rough. Now, so far, they're hitting him on crime. And even my brother was saying, I'm not going to a Phillies game. It's too dangerous to go downtown. And there's a lot of that talk in the suburbs. So they're going to tie him to crime and the long-term prisoners that he's defended, and they're going to tie him up with that. But still, you got a problem with Oz being from somewhere else, from Jersey.
They have a problem that he might need to use a monitor for a little while. They don't have a problem when you literally have 90-year-old senators who can barely, when they're speaking on the Senate, their eyes are closed. None of these people even read the bills put in front of them, cognitive problems or not.
Yeah.
You have basically most on the Democratic and Republican side, even if they have all their faculties mentally, are corrupt as sin. But they're zeroing in on Fetterman, who again, there is a line where yes, there are some credible questions to be asked, but they're fixating on that he just had a stroke. Well, the average stroke to have a full recovery can take years. That doesn't mean somebody can't function and represent, in the Senate or whatever the office is. They might just have more challenges in terms of processing, not intelligence, not ability to do the job, processing, which is why he needed the monitor for captioning and those kind of things. So it seems crazy to me, but the bigger problem is, Ron, I was one of the only journalists even talking about it in 2020. None of these people said a word. That Biden was clearly, and we're not doctors, I'm not diagnosing him, but he was clearly in cognitive decline while he was running for president. If you watched his interview with Jake Tupperware last night, clearly it's getting worse. It's not a stutter. He talks about, I had a stutter since childhood. He talked coherently when he was vice president. He talked coherently when he was a senator. He was
forgetting but he did talk coherently.
Right. He plagiarized. He was forgetting where he was on the campaign trail. In some clips, he was forgetting Obama's name. He was slurring words. And in some speeches, it was incoherent. They covered for him. They called it just Biden gaffes. But for a kind of mild, sort of more progressive guy, because I would say Fetterman's more progressive than Biden, they're raking him over the coals. Seems to be quite a double standard to me.
Well, my theory is, and actually Chris Matthews, which, welcome back, buddy. You were very missed, which by the way, side note on his little spiel there, how freaking privileged do you have to be to say you feel unsafe at a baseball game? A professional sporting event, everyone paid God knows how much for a ticket to get in. Well, I guess baseball games, there's so many of them, you can get deals or whatever. But a baseball game, you feel endangered. That's a your brother problem, Chris, okay? Most regular people, that wouldn't anyway. But I think it was looking very grim for Dr. Oz. His campaign was comically ridiculous. It still is. But it was just absurd beyond. I mean, it all started. He showed up at a hockey game and he was like so many other people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, I enjoy a good hockey match. And he was at a Pens Phillies game. So, or Flyers, excuse me, Pens Flyers game. And so people just trolled the hell out of him because he clearly knows nothing about Pennsylvania. He's not from there. So people were trolling him. They were just going, like so many other Pennsylvania people, I go to the hockey match and I root for both teams in the Commonwealth. I mean, and then he did his whole crudité episode where he's just like, I'm not finding my crudité in the grocery store. And he wasn't in a Pennsylvania grocery store. He was in a Jersey one. Other people from Jersey were trolling him. You had people like Steven Van Zandt making videos telling him to come home to Jersey. And then you had his episode where he went to a Penn State tailgate and he's sipping red wine out of a glass. I mean, this is comical. And it goes to show you can have all the money in the world, but that might not buy you a friend to tell you to frickin' stop. Because Dr. Oz doesn't have one of those friends who went up to him and said, buddy, you're humiliating yourself. Please just stop. This is ridiculous. He doesn't have one of those friends. It's almost kind of sad. I almost feel bad for him. So I think it was looking very bleak. And we are in a very sleepy midterm season because people are just trying to get by. People were still amidst a pandemic. People are just trying to live their lives. People are struggling. People are very disenfranchised. So this isn't necessarily a hot button midterm season. This race is one of the few races that is getting a lot of national attention. Guess what? It ain't good for ratings if it's a runaway slaughter for John Fetterman. So the media needed to make it more of a horse race. So they ran with the only thing they could, John Fetterman's health. Now, all of a sudden, it's closer. That's what they want.
Well, what I find incredible, because to me, let's put aside the fact that none of the coverage is actually about issues. Philadelphia has one of the worst homelessness problem in America. I covered it on the ground. Obviously, Pennsylvania is, one of the deindustrialized states in the Rust Belt that has been destroyed by neoliberal policies, NAFTA, offshoring. They're not asking him about that. They're not asking Oz about that because the media doesn't care about the issues. Therefore, the status quo, because they're owned by the multi-billion-dollar corporate conglomerates that are fucking us all. So there's no coverage, no questioning about any of that. But what's amazing to me, do you see any of these people grilling Dianne Feinstein or her aides when literally you have other Democratic senators saying she doesn't know where she is?
Yeah, she doesn't know where she is, and she's showing just gross cognitive decline, and she'll get angry, like you kind of ask her a question just in regular, and she'll get frustrated because she won't.
I'm not trying to knock her. I mean, people get old and that happens, and she's corrupt, but I don't wish her poor health. I don't wish her poor health, but the bottom line is they kind of sort of cover that, like a headline here and there. There's no Spanish Inquisition about it. And again, Biden, I'm going to play just some of quote unquote Biden's gaffes from the 2020 campaign. And you tell me when we come back, if you remember seeing any national media outlet cover these or even ask questions, is something off here?
People are losing faith in what the president says. Think about it. The words of a president matter significantly. And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. So I want to thank you both, and I want to thank the former general. I keep calling him general, but the guy who runs that outfit over there. Welcome to Kingswood Community Center. Actually, that's the one down I used to work. As a joke. You didn't know where we were anyway. Thank you all for all you're doing. God bless you all.
Mr. President, thank you.
And I want to thank all of you here, for including bipartisan elected officials like Representative Governor, Senator Braun, Senator Booker, Representative Jackie. Are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here. So the best way to get something done, if it holds near and dear to you that you like to be able to, anyway. I have a conversion of the road to Damascus. Because now you say, by the way, are you going to stick with the president on the following president, the last guy? Because they invaded another country and annexed a significant portion of it called Crimea. Right. He's saying that it was my boss, it was his fault. Unite this party and unite this country. So folks, you want to nominate a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, a proud Democrat, an Obama Democrat. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
We're not doing this to kind of dance on Joe Biden's party here and be rude or insensitive. People get old. But clearly he's not ready for prime time. Clearly none of that was a stutter. He is having problems processing, articulating. It seems remembering things. I don't remember any of the same aggressive news coverage that the media is now doing in terms of John Fetterman.
No, not at all. And it's definitely way freaking different. And that's my theory why. I think they just want this thing to be close, because if it isn't, this is their only ratings grab for the midterm season, and they know it. This is the race people are somewhat paying attention to, that's getting some national attention. They don't want it to be a blowout. So they made it close. It's close now. Like, it's neck and neck. I mean, Fetterman might lose this thing. And if he does, I mean, that's the reason. I mean, really, right. The corporate media just manufactures so much fear that it's like, oh, he can't do the job. He can't do this. He can't do this. And now the numbers are getting closer. And they're like, great, we're going to have our horse race in November. We needed one, baby.